Going live, pulling up the notes. It's Corley Moore, Firehouse Vigilance, weekly scrap, number 110. Tonight's guest is none other than Chief Dave McGrail. He has 39 years in the fire service, currently an assistant chief with Denver Fire Department. He's in operations. He literally wrote the book on high-rise firefighting. He instructs all over the world, a real-world expert on fireground operations, strategy, tactics, command and control. I myself have had the pleasure of seeing him in person on 2 separate occasions. So, Chief McGrail, welcome my brother to Scrap episode number 110. Did I lose you? Chief? Hold on. We'll see what we can do. Talk to me, people. Let me know if I am still moving.
There?
Are you there? Maybe. I heard you talk for a minute. Can you hear me, Chief? Oh, you're back. You're muted. Just click unmute if you can. Okay. That was me trying to get you back. Are you there?
I'm here now.
Okay.
I lost you a little bit there on the front end. How's the connection now?
It seems to be good.
Okay.
I'm checking with the audience to see. Okay, right now they're saying frozen. I'm just checking. I'm going to ask them. This is the fun part of going live.
Yes.
Okay, right now it looks like we're good now. All right. All right, Chief. I don't know what people heard. I did a nice intro. I don't know if you heard it. I had a beautiful intro for you, Chief. Did you hear any of it?
I heard it all.
Okay,
so I
good.
heard all the intro, but you started to fade out toward the tail end when I started to talk.
Okay, well, now I'll throw it back to you. Let me get my notes back up. I love a good rocky start. Yeah, welcome to Scrap number 110. Now I throw it back to you.
Oh, thank you. Like I said before, I'm flattered and honored that you would ask me to be a part of this. I love your program, and if I'm in the same company as the folks that you've had on previously, number 1 through 109, that's fantastic. That's really good company. I'm flattered and honored to be here, and I appreciate the engaged firefighters. Number 1 being you, and all the other engaged firefighters that are part of this tonight, because that's one of the things that I appreciate most about our fire service is the folks that are really engaged and the people that are not just on the job, but they're into the job. That's cool. Thanks for being here tonight.
Oh, Chief, thanks. That's kind words, and believe me, you absolutely belong here. I don't think anyone would argue that whatsoever. One of the premier guests that I've had. And now that's a beautiful segue, as you saying that, because I wanted to say something right out the gate that I normally don't do, which is a giant thank you to my audience, to the audience of the Scrap, to the audience of Firehouse Vigilance that tunes in every week and watches us live and brings the questions, because the Scrap would not be what it is without the audience. So I wanted to start off by saying that thank you to everyone who tunes in live and who listens to it and makes it what it is. And I'm going to do 2 special shout outs, and I told myself I wasn't going to do it because I forget too many people that are important, but 2 very special shout outs that have made the Scrap into a big part of what it is. And if I leave someone out that's just as important, please forgive me and I'll get back to it when I think of it. But number 1 is Brian Brush and number 2 is Kurt Isaacson, because both of those guys have supported this thing from the beginning. It's crazy, but when I have a guest on, those guys' networks just encompass the fire service. I call them and say, hey, I'm having Dave McGrail on tonight. Do you guys have any insight into some good questions I can ask them? And both guys responded within minutes with just insight to make this a good interview. So I wanted to start off this thing by saying thank you to the audience and thank you to those 2 guys. So all that being said, Chief, did I miss anything in the intro or anything you want to add?
No, I think that we're all good.
Okay.
We're all ready to go.
Then I'm going to kick it off with Brian Brush's, when I texted him today to get the dirt, the skinny on you, this is what he sent back, and it's just a quote. He said, ask him about Andy Fredericks. Of all your guests so far, I think he probably has the most direct and deepest connection, and he has been arguably one of the greatest to continue his message.
And Corley, if I start to lose you or anything like that, I might move to a different location in my house.
Okay.
So let me know if we have any problems like we did on the front end. Andy Fredericks. Yeah, what a fantastic firefighter. I, I guess I, I came to know Andy just by virtue of the connection through Fire Engineering Magazine. I was writing some articles for Fire Engineering. I wrote an article about a high-rise fire that I had and started getting some involvement with that and involvement with writing. Wrote a little bit about a fire that occurred in Denver that claimed the life of engineer Mark Langvard from Truck 16. The firefighters in the audience would know that by way of the Denver drill.
Okay.
And the firefighter that was lost, and we honor him with the Denver drill and trying to prevent what happened to him to happen from, try to prevent that from happening to any other firefighter. But the Denver drill, Mark Langbart wrote a little bit about that as well. But long story short, as I know you are, you're engaged and you read, and I know the firefighters in your audience are as well. So whether it's Fire Engineering Magazine or Jim McCormick's magazine or Firehouse magazine, whatever, I was reading Fire Engineering many years ago, and I came across an article called "Return of the Solid Stream," and that was an article that was written by Andy Fredericks. And I've always been a big proponent of smoothbore nozzles and the solid stream of water, delivering solid water droplets to burning solid fuels and that sort of thing. And most of our fire services in love with combination nozzles, and some of our fire services in love with automatic combination nozzles, which is very frightening, but it's one of those things that we continually work to improve. Long story short, I was reading Return of the Solid Stream, and this guy, Andy Fredericks, who I'd never met before, was, Andy was a very smart guy. He had a master's degree, he had the pedigree. He was not only just a down and dirty, Bronx firefighter, but he was very, very intelligent. And as I'm reading that article, I'm like, geez, this is fantastic. This is everything I'd like to be able to say, and I'd like to be able to articulate it the same way that Andy was doing. And I was very moved by the article. I said, this is fantastic. And I have the article in a binder up in my office right now, and I share with other firefighters to this day. And I think that was a 90s vintage article, whatever the case may be. I contacted at the time, Bill Manning was the editor of Fire Engineering Magazine, and I said, I'd like to reach out to Andy Fredericks. I'd like to talk to him, so on and so forth. So Bill gave me his contact information, called him, got a hold of him, and hey, my name is Dave McGrail. I'm a firefighter from Denver. I just got through reading your article. That's fantastic. So we ended up having a long conversation on the telephone, and that became, that was the start of a friendship for us.
Right.
And over the course of time, Andy invited me to be a part of his hands-on engine company operations training team at FDIC. And to say, it's like, okay, that's outstanding. So I started teaching with him at FDIC and the hands-on training, and got to know him better, and then started to meet a lot of the people he was associated with. One of my closest friends to this day is Mark Wesseldine, he's a retired firefighter from New York City. He was a chauffeur on Tower Ladder 58 in the Bronx, but he was very close to Andy, and he lives out here in Colorado now. Okay. And having dinner with him and my wife and his wife on Thursday night. But Mark's just a lot of connections, and I have mentioned to firefighters before that for me, Andy was like the hub of a wheel with a lot of spokes coming out of that wheel. He reached a lot of people, and there's many guys that I'm very close to in the fire service to this day, and probably the inception of that was my relationship with Andy and becoming friends with him. Over the course of the FDIC and the hands-on, he suggested to FDIC that we develop a hands-on training on standpipe operations. That it was kind of was an extension of the engine company hands-on training. That's where I met Jerry Tracy and some of Jerry's guys, Harry Lee Davis, God rest his soul, and John Sorello, who's a captain on Rescue 1 and FDNY now. I brought some of my guys in, and we started doing the FDIC hands-on standpipe operations. So, but was pretty close to Andy, and this was, to this day, obviously, I wish none of that tragedy on September 11th would have ever happened, because there was 343 very valuable men that we lost that day from that fire department, plus many other people. But I'm always curious where Andy would be at today and what he would be doing.
Right.
Most guys say that he'd probably be a deputy chief on that job, and I'd love to have him around so that he could answer a lot of these questions, the NIST studies, different things like that. He always really had the ability to kind of put things in perspective and help the rest of us understand it better. But taught with Andy, did various things with Andy. I was in New York doing some teaching and working with Andy in July of 2001. And the weekend before the 4th of July of 2001, my dad and I were down at Squad 18 in Lower Manhattan, and Andy was on duty, and we were saying goodbye to him after that trip and having worked with him. And as we were driving away from Squad 18's quarters there in Lower Manhattan, we were headed to Newark Airport to get on a plane and come back to Denver. My dad yelled out to Andy, "Hey, see you later, Andy," and he waved at us, and my dad took a picture of him. And that's the last photograph I have of him. And that was with a standard issue 35 millimeter camera. And a lot of your audience, I don't know, at that time, at least I didn't have what was new technology and digital camera and so on and so forth at that time, but had to take it to a place, Walgreens, whatever, and get them developed, and got them developed, brought them back. I looked through them, didn't really give it a second thought because it was pre 9/11. And then on the
Hold up. Lost you, Chief.
I was at home in the shower. It was my day off. My wife called me on the phone from work.
Yeah.
You lost me? I'm still there?
Back up. Yeah, just for a second. Just got to back up for 10 seconds.
Okay.
Walgreens. You were getting it from Walgreens.
Yeah, we had to have the photos developed at Walgreens, and then went and got the photos, and then you go through the photos, and yeah, this is cool, good stuff. And it was pre 9/11, and so then on the day of 9/11, I was in the shower. It was my day off. My wife called, answered the phone. She just says, "You need to turn on the news," and I turned on the news and saw the same thing that all the other firefighters that are listening tonight saw that day. And one of the first things I did is I called Andy's house, and his wife Michelle answered, and I said, "Michelle, this is Dave McGrail from Denver. I'm just checking to see, do you know if Andy's okay?" And she said, "Well, he's working. I know he went on the second alarm." And my heart just sunk because I knew that there was a real high probability that we probably lost him. And like everybody else, none of us really had any idea how horrific it was going to be, until several days into it and finding out that there was so many firefighters lost. But yeah, he was. It's interesting, Corley, because I did a program for in the Colony, Texas. Okay, and those guys down there are just some really top shelf guys.
Top shelf.
And they have a company on their fire department, Squad 18.
Yes.
And in honor of Squad 18 from FDNY. And I had dinner at that firehouse one night when I was there doing a training program. And one of the firefighters said, and he made a real good point. Sometimes when somebody's gone, as some people said, at anybody's funeral, whoever's funeral it is, but he was a terrific guy, so on and so forth. But one firefighter, was he really a good guy? And I told him, I said, he really was. He was a family man. He had children. He was committed to his wife, and he was a gentleman. He wasn't a jerk. He treated with people with respect and dignity. And certainly, of all that, we all know him as this very intelligent, experienced firefighter that really he emphasized the importance of the engine company. It was cool to be an engine company firefighter with Andy. And he did so much to enhance the engine company. And I think a lot of that lives on today. I wrote an article years ago called Andy's Ambassadors, because I think there's a number of people. Certainly Brian Brush and Kurt Isaacson are among them. I hope to consider myself among them, but Andy's ambassadors, guys that are carrying on where he left off. And certainly would take a whole bunch of us to do the work that he would have potentially have done had we not lost him at such a young age. But he was a good man. He was a good man, and he emphasized and really shined a light on the importance of the engine company. And miss him very much. But I think that he's looking down on us, and I think he's very proud of the work that his ambassadors are doing to keep the engine company moving forward. And we're still fighting the battle.
No doubt.
Had a guy the other day, was talking about the importance of a fog nozzle for, protection and minimizing water damage. And I almost, it's like, really? We're in the 21st century. How could you possibly say that? But still trying to educate firefighters on the value of the smoothbore nozzle and the solid stream of water inside of a serious interior firefight. But that all came from Andy. But I think about him very frequently. My wife and I were just in California in October for the 20th reunion of the Andrew Fredericks Memorial Golf Tournament. And I'm not any kind of a golfer or anything like that, but that was the venue that we put, Paul Scholler, retired battalion chief from San Jose, Ted Corporandi, retired battalion chief from San Francisco. They started the Fire Nuggets magazine, and they started that memorial many years ago. This was a 20th annual memorial. It was great to see everybody, and just seen a lot of guys that I'm connected to, Corley, because of that original connection with Andy Fredericks. But great guy. We should all strive to be as good an engine company firefighter and as engaged, as educated as Andy was with regard to that, and we should continue to spread that message.
It's awesome.
As Andy's ambassadors. A lot of Andy's ambassadors, guys that might not have even ever have known him, but there's a lot of good guys out there doing good work.
No, it's awesome. And like you said, that's those spokes on that wheel, man, that network, that connections. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, I've got a first question from the audience. We're switching to a tactical question here. Are you ready?
Yeah.
It's a long one. This comes from Kyle Thon. He said, I got a question whenever you can get to it regarding elevated aerial master streams, fog versus smoothbore. We are an urban metropolitan fire department, dry ladder trucks. There is a bit of a debate at the Firehouse that led me to your Fire Nuggets article on master streams, tactical use of master streams 2005. We have a few folks that want to keep the fog tip on for some of the reasons you've argued against in your article. Since our current offerings have similar flow capabilities, the biggest conflict we need to solve is the benefit of solid water, large droplets, and reach within wind thermal currents. With that being said, like I said, it's long, so with that being said, could you elaborate on your position of number one priority of master stream as large volume of water a long distance and have it arrive at the objective as intact as possible? So there you go.
And who'd that question come from, Corley?
Kyle Thon.
And where's he from?
He didn't mention.
Okay, Kyle, thank you for the question. Kyle, you answered the question. You answered the question within your question. You have all the information there. Let's see here. How can I do this? I know I don't want to be insulting to anybody, but I got to be honest with you, Kyle. Wherever I go, anywhere in our fire service, American or Canadian fire service, if I see a fog nozzle on a master stream appliance, I just can't even take that company seriously. It's like, what's the point? Most fog nozzles that are on master stream appliances, it's been my experience from what I've seen and in person and what I've seen in videos and over the course of time, most fog nozzles that are on master stream appliances are almost all the time on a straight stream pattern. So it's like, okay, what's the point? Now, when they do go to a fog pattern, obviously any amount of wind or whatever is going to affect that stream. any amount of heat certainly is going to prematurely evaporate a lot of the stream that's trying to, or ideally we'd like to get to the seat of the fire, so on and so forth. It's just kind of ridiculous. I know that some people will say, okay, well, what about a hazmat operation or a mass decon or something like that? Yeah, I guess it's important to have the tool, certainly in the compartment, but I'm simply a proponent of I'm a big proponent of smoothbore nozzles for a wide range of operations, but on a master stream, I think it's critical to have that smoothbore nozzle. I think it's critical for firefighters to be prepared to take those top 4 of a typical stack tip assembly, take those top 3 off down to the 2-inch tip, so you can maximize and truly get that 1,062 GPM if it's given the proper water supply and the proper pressurization. One of the easiest ways I've found to sell that with a fire department administration is the cost for a stream straightener and a set of stack tips from the 2-inch on up to the 1 3/8. That's a lot cheaper to purchase than these jumbo fog nozzles, which are usually 4 digits worth of money that you have to pay for them. So I just, like I said, I just can't even take it seriously when I see somebody that has a master stream with a combination fog nozzle on there. I truly believe that the smoothbore nozzle is the way to go. And you said it in the question, Kyle. We're trying to throw a whole lot of water intact a long distance from where we're throwing it so that it can reach burning solid fuels. So, I'm not sure what else I can give you.
Perfect. Perfect answer. I love the. Yeah, there you go. A lot of people can go back and say no one's going to take us serious with these fog nozzles on our aerials.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know. I saw something the other night, and it was very disheartening because, Corley, you've probably researched the super pumper from New York back in the day. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that or not, but I got to see the super pumper in person when I went back to New York as a young man. And that was really cool. And the super pumper tender had this master stream on it with an enormous tip size, so on and so forth. Well, FDNY has a new one out that's part of their newer super pumper system. And this rig has got these automatic combination nozzles on it. It was very disheartening to see it. I need to reach out to my friend Ray McCormick and get his take on it and forth on that. There is a place for combination nozzles in our fire service. There absolutely is. But it's not on master streams, and it certainly is not on weapons for interior attack firefighting. One of the things that all of you firefighters that are part of this tonight, and this, Corley, is that most of the fires that most of us have gone to and most of us will go to as firefighters are fires that don't turn out to be that terribly spectacular.
Right. And
you can have a combination nozzle, you can have a smoothbore nozzle, and most firefighters will tell you it really didn't matter. Most of the time it doesn't matter. It's in that interior structural firefight in a real unventilated atmosphere with pre-flashover conditions where it's hot and you and I are getting down as low as we possibly can get. And that's where we really need that powerful weapon. And as Andy Fredericks said, we want to make sure solid water droplets reach burning solid fuels. You and I respond right now, Corley, to a vehicle on fire at the Home Depot parking lot. I'm all about a combination nozzle, and I'm all about a combination nozzle because we're outside. We're in a ventilated atmosphere. You and I can go on air. We can hit it from a straight stream at a 45-degree angle. We can knock it down. As we get close to it, we'll open up to a wide pattern, but it's not protecting us. It's pushing stuff away from us just to make the operation a little bit easier outside. So what I was taught in 1982 when I came in the fire service at the propane Christmas tree was wide fog pattern protects you.
Yeah.
And still firefighters to this day, including firefighters that on paper are veteran firefighters with a lot of time on the job, will cite protection.
Oh yeah, the left for life, the right to fight, and left for life.
Yeah.
And
they'll cite protection as part of the reason why they're using that combination nozzle. everybody needs to know, and I'm guessing the people in your audience, because they're engaged firefighters, know it's not protection, it's pushing. And if you're in a ventilated atmosphere, a Home Depot parking lot, you can push stuff away from you. That's not a bad thing. But when you and I or other firefighters were to open up a combination nozzle in a hot hallway, we're not protecting ourselves, we're pushing. And we could be pushing that to unsuspecting firefighters, to unprotected civilians. We're pushing the fire to uninvolved places. And yes, you can push fire, and you absolutely can push heat and the products of combustion, that sort of thing. We know that from the most recent fire stream studies and so forth. But I'm a proponent of solid stream nozzles on master streams and solid stream nozzles for interior structural firefighting. And I think once again, there's a place for combination nozzles, usually outside. You and I get into a water fight with the truck company at the firehouse. We'd want to have a combination nozzle because we don't want to hurt them. We just want to get them wet.
Right.
So we wouldn't hit them with a solid stream of water and give them cardiac tamponade. So water fights, hazmat, gas leaks, vehicle fires outside, great places for the combination nozzle. But the smoothbore nozzle should be the primary nozzle in the fire service, my opinion. So
love it. Preach, keep preaching. And Kyle said he is from Austin, Texas. Just so he did follow up, and he said, okay. Perfect. Thank you, Chief.
Keep Austin weird, Kyle. Keep Austin weird, right? Isn't that what they say?
They're doing a good job of it, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Love my Texas neighbors.
Thank you for that question, Kyle, and thanks for the work that you're doing to keep your corner of the fire service the best it can be. Please say hi to Captain Matt Rush, another one of Andy's ambassadors, Captain Matt Rush from Austin, Texas Fire Department.
Awesome. No, and keep the questions coming, because you only get so many chances to ask your personal question to Chief Dave McGrail and get it read to him live. So a lot of people are saying, Dirk said, we have the stacked tips with Stream Shaper, but it's considered blasphemous to even suggest to put the smoothbore on and take the fog off. And he's got a frowny face on it. A lot of people are saying, preach on, Chief, preach on. Yes. I'm seeing if I'm missing any questions. I'm scrolling through. All right. David Woodward said, we remove the fog nozzle completely minus our vehicle fire line. We will overpump. Oops, it scrolled. Our 1 3/4 tip versus running the 2-inch seems to keep some better velocity as we hit. Okay. All right. Question. Here we go. I haven't vetted this question yet, so I'm coming at it blind. It's a brand new one from Brian Fiore. High-rise water supply ops. With wet standpipe systems, should we pump to the fire floor or to the roof? Is it correct we need to overcome the head pressure and base our elevation calculations on highest point in the building? Second, 25 psi standpipe friction loss. Why is this one number that never changes in any reference literature? Any studies to reinforce this constant? What's the history behind this?
Oh, wow. We could take the rest of the entire program to answer all of that question back there. So,
well, it's your show, so you can do what you want to do.
Where did that question come from?
That came from Brian Fiore, and I'm sure.
Where's he at? Does it say?
Yeah, he did not say, but I'm sure he will now that you asked. So,
all right, Brian, thank you for the question. Let's see here. Here's what I can tell you about that. My philosophy and what my fire department does is, even if it's an automatic wet standpipe system, and even if it's, let's say, a modern building with a fire pump that would likely be operating properly and so on and so forth, my recommendation is that we put our water into the building and we start pumping the system with our engineers and our pumpers. On the DFD, we use 2 engine companies minimum and 2 pumpers. One of them's on the FDC, one of them's on a hydrant. The water's going through 4 impellers on its way into the building. We're dividing the labor of achieving the pressure and the volume. We're dividing that labor up between those 2 pumpers. And then also, when you have 2 pumpers involved in that primary water supply, you don't have all your eggs in one basket. Let's say one of those pumps was to fail or whatever, you still are pumping water into the system. Now, one of the things that we've recently learned over the course of the last 5 or 10 years is, if your building has PRVs, and I have a lot of buildings with PRVs, in Denver, there's short buildings, there's tall buildings, there's horizontal buildings that have PRVs. But if a building has a PRV, the way the PRV is designed to operate is you have to pump the entire system. Okay. So take a 50-story building, and let's say we have a fire on the 6th floor, and we're essentially pumping to, the hose valve outlet on 5 for hooking up on the floor below. If that building has PRVs, we're actually going to pump that whole system, because the PRVs, in order to operate properly, you got to pump the whole system, if that makes sense. Now, once again, this is a discussion that could go on for several hours, because the reality is that when you have to pump to the 50th floor of a high-rise building for a fire that's on 5, you're putting yourself in a more vulnerable position, because you're having to put more pressure into the building, and you increase the probability of having some broken pipes, whatever the case may be. The weakest link in the chain could fail for you on that. But right now, what my recommendation is, and what we're doing, is to always pump the system regardless of whether or not you believe the interior pump is going to work or not, so that we have as much control as possible. If the building has PRVs, you have to pump the whole system for the PRVs to operate properly. The 25 PSI is just a historical number that came up with regard to the friction loss components that are typical inside of a standpipe system. It is not an exact science, not by a long shot. 25 PSI, 5 per floor, 5 PSI per floor for the head pressure. Those are just rules of thumb. It was Brian, right, Corley? Brian Fiora?
Yes, Brian Fiora. Nice memory.
Brian, the game changer for us in terms of standpipe operations, as far as I'm concerned, another item that I learned from Andy Fredericks and our friends and brothers from the New York City Fire Department, FDNY, is the addition of the standpipe inline pressure gauge. When you have the standpipe inline pressure gauge, essentially you're putting a pump panel remote from the pumper. And when I'm teaching pump operators, what I was taught, Brian, many years ago is, okay, you start with the nozzle, you work your way back, and 25 and head pressure and all this other stuff. You can be a genius, and you're probably going to have a real hard time getting to that exact pressure. So, Brian, what I recommend to firefighters right now, if you and I were pump operators on the street and there's a fire, number one, we're really not going to know what floor it is until our guys get up there and can tell us the precise floor. But I'm going to do a guesstimate looking at it from the outside. I'm going to say, you know what? That looks like that's probably pretty close to the 15th floor. I'm going to pump to 20. I'm going to pump to the 20th floor. So I always tell our engineers and guys that I'm teaching this, I pump to a range. Just pump to a range based on a guesstimate of what you think it is. The fine tuning occurs on the floor below at the hose valve outlet with our control firefighter and our gate valve that we brought into the building. And we fine tune that pressure down or up as necessary. And especially if you're using 2.5, and some of you might be using 2.5 with a 2-inch nozzle section, whatever, less is more. And I did a training class at our fire academy last Tuesday, and I told the new recruits, I said, if it calls for 70 pounds, give them 65 and then try from there. So many great firefighters in our fire service at one point in time or another, we're at the end of an overpressurized 2.5. Oh, yeah. And the thing in their mind is, geez, I don't think I'll ever do that again.
Any part of that.
Less pressure is best with 2.5. So you don't have to be as precise as historically I think we've felt like we had to be so precise. The standpipe inline pressure gauge is the answer to that. The gate valve is the answer to being able to regulate that pressure. So having your engineers get to a range of pressure that is a little bit more than is necessary, and then have our control firefighter on the floor below regulate that pressure to a more precise number. Now, with that said, Brian, on your engine company and on the very best engine companies that I know in the fire service, those engine companies are testing that standpipe inline pressure gauge regularly. On the DFD, we call it rig day. And so a good engine company on the DFD on their rig day will take that inline pressure gauge, standpipe inline pressure gauge out of the kit. They'll put it on an outlet. It's a great day to exercise the high-rise hose. It's a great day to exercise the high-rise appliances, the high-rise nozzle. But ultimately, you want to see, does that gauge say the same thing as my compound discharge and my the discharge gauge for that outlet? Because bad information is worse than no information at all. And we want to make sure that that gauge is accurate. If it's not, you need to have it recalibrated, or you need a new gauge, because they get dropped, they get banged around a little bit inside the kit, that sort of thing. But that's the game changer, is the gauge. And then understanding that you may have to pump the whole system so that the PRVs will operate properly. And when I talk about a PRV on a hose valve outlet off of a standpipe system inside of a building, part of the recommendation is also that we're putting our own gate valve on that valve. Now, when you say this to people, they look at you like you got a carrot sticking out of your forehead. Well, you got to be kidding me. You wanted me to take an extra 5 pounds of weight in my kit up inside this building to the 20th floor so I can put a valve on a valve? Yes, I do. And the reason is now you can open up the PRV fully, if it's a PRV, and then you can regulate the pressure with our gate valve that we put on first. That should be the first thing that goes on, if you've got room to do it after the building valve. But the other thing, Brian, my experience with those hose valve outlets inside a building, and I know your question was primarily on water supply, but on the hose valve outlets, the fire that you and I and Corley go to tonight, the hose valve outlet that we hook up to, it's never been opened before, ever. Okay? And it's a 1960s vintage building in Congress Park in Denver, Colorado. And our fire's on the 12th floor, and the 11th floor, we're hooking up to a hose valve outlet that's never been opened, period. It may be very difficult to open. We may break the valve trying to open it. Once we get it open, it's going to be hard to fine tune and regulate the pressure. So we're wanting to hook up our gate valve, get the building's hose valve outlet open and fully open, not touch it again, and regulate everything with our gate valve that we're testing once a week on rig day. Getting back to the water supply thing, once again, I encourage you to pump the system with a minimum of 2 pumpers, so you don't have all your eggs in one basket. And then, the 25 is a rule of thumb, but it's not precise. There's so many things going on in individual systems that you don't know about. The head pressure thing can be a little bit more precise if you know for sure it's entirely a vertical riser, but ultimately, try not to be so precise. Just try to pump to a range of pressure, and then have your guy on the floor below fine-tune the pressure. I hope that helps.
Oh,
I know we're all over the place.
There's a ton of knowledge all right there. Next question coming, and he was from Delray, South Florida. So,
love the Florida firefighters.
Absolutely. Brian Brush, speaking of, says, any news on a second edition of the book, Chief?
Yes, actively working on the second edition. And Brian, you know, because you're a lot smarter guy than I am in terms of writing and how much time that takes, and writer's block. And I have moments of greatness, and then I have periods of not so much greatness. But actively working on that, and hope to see that within the next year or two.
Nice, very good.
I like Brian too. I just love Brian Brush. He's one of the best in the business. I met Brian when he was a firefighter on West Metro Fire Rescue in the Denver metro area. And, I always tell firefighters, Corley, that the great firefighters in our fire service, like Brian Brush, they don't always realize how much they've done. I think about when obviously we talked about the 343 firefighters, one of those being Andy Fredericks. Those firefighters' name is on a stone, in front of Denver Fire Headquarters. There's 50 some names that are on a granite stone. It's easy to quantify firefighters' lives that have been lost. It's easy to quantify firefighters who've been injured at fires. It's very difficult to quantify how many firefighters weren't killed and weren't injured because of people like Brian Brush.
Right on.
Brian and a firefighter who I have the privilege to work with on Denver, Captain Eric Tolan, they were both younger firefighters on West Metro Fire Rescue. And once again, that's a very good fire department in the Denver metro area. Brian and Eric worked really hard in their organization and were able to change and significantly, drastically improve water delivery on that fire department with better hose and better nozzles. And there will be firefighters generations after that occurred today that might not even realize how it happened.
Right.
It's part of the culture on that fire department now. But they saved lives. They saved firefighters' lives, and they may not. Brian is a humble man. He's a gentleman, and so is Eric Tolan. They're not going to go out and pound on their chest or tell people what a great thing they did. There's firefighters alive today and firefighters that are uninjured today because of their work. Many guys like them. You and I can go on with the list. The Kurt Isaacsons.
Absolutely.
Chief Scott Thompson out of the Colony Fire Department in Texas. A number of guys.
I'm interviewing one right now too. So
well, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. So,
all right, I'm gonna try and catch up with the questions. A lot of questions. If I skip your question, just put it down again because I'm trying to keep up, everybody. Whit Dotson asked, Chief, how have you managed family life, firefighting, teaching, and being a student in nationwide classes over the years?
Well, did you say that came from Whit?
Whit Dotson.
Where's he from? Did he say?
He didn't say. I think they'll get in the habit of doing it in the future, but so far they haven't caught on yet.
Oh boy, that's a real good question. I'm very blessed because I'm married to a wonderful woman, my wife Gina, who has supported me through good times and bad in the fire service. I'm in a different place now than I was when I started in the fire service. When I started in the fire service, I was a single man for a number of years, and I was able to just make it all about me. And but then I found the love of my life, my wife Gina, and I married her, and we have 2 children. And today our children, Caroline is 20, and my son Joseph is 18. I didn't always put my family first, and I'm ashamed to say that. I've had to alter things a little bit. I am into the job. I encourage all firefighters to be into the job, but I would tell all firefighters too that your family at home, that's got to be your priority. That has to be our priority. I mean, when you go to work, you're at work, but when you're at home, you need to be at home, and it needs to be your priority. And I'll tell you what I did. Is it, Corley, is it W-I-T?
W-H-I-T. It might be short for Whitney, but it's Whit.
Okay. Well, just call him Whit. I just wanted to make sure I'm pronouncing that right. Whit, many years ago, I'll just tell you a short story here. Many years ago, my wife had what you and I would refer to as a real job in corporate America, okay? And a very smart woman that worked, and she was a chief benefits officer, actually for the Colorado Fire and Police Pension Association. That's how I met her. When I met her, she was on a visitation team, and she came to my firehouse to teach us firefighters a little bit about our pension. For me, it was love at first sight. For her, I had to do quite a bit of convincing. There's no doubt about that. But many years into our relationship, we have a little girl, and we have my son Joseph. My son Joseph is our little guy who has special needs. He's a cerebral palsy guy, and he requires a significant amount of care 24/7, 365. Anyhow, long story short, my wife had to travel on business and on this one particular morning many years ago. And I had to be at the firehouse. And we had someone lined up that was going to take care of daycare for us, so on and so forth. And the morning rolled around, and that person called us and said, "I'm sick. I'm not going to be able to make it." And my wife looked at me, and I looked at my wife, and "I'm sorry, honey, I got to be at the firehouse. What could be more important in the world than me having to be at the firehouse?" "Well, can't you call in sick?" "Well, I don't call in sick. I've never called in sick. I'm not going to call in sick. You'll have to figure it out." My wife had to change flights. She had to do a whole bunch of juggling. She had to make a whole bunch of adjustments. She should have divorced me there on the spot. There's no doubt about it. She loved me even though I had some flaws. If I had that to do over again, Whit, I would have said, "You know what? I'm going to have to call in sick today because I need to put a higher priority on the needs of my family rather than my ego and my need to get to the firehouse and my need to not miss any fires that happen on this shift, whatever the case may be. Whit, I didn't do a very good job as a younger man juggling that. Where I'm at today, my number one priority is my wife and my children and my mom and dad, and trying to make sure that I'm a good husband, the best husband I can be, make sure I'm a good father, make sure I'm a good son to my parents. And the fire department is still very, very important to me. And when I'm at the firehouse, I'm at the firehouse. I'm engaged in the fire department. I'm into the job on and off duty, but the priority is my family. And I encourage you and any of the other firefighters that are listening, especially the younger firefighters, make sure that your family comes first. Because when the day comes when you retire from the fire department, your family's going to still be there. Okay. Yeah. And I've had many, many, many good years in the fire service. And I've had a couple of times that were difficult. And the times that were most difficult for me in the fire service, guess who was there? I mean, there, and she was there 100%. And that's my wife, Gina.
Right on.
And so I've gotten, to answer your question, I've gotten better at juggling it. I try to only travel for teaching once a month. I try to really put stuff on my wife's radar. Hey, I'm planning on doing this. Does this work for you? There's things like the Kurt Isaacson high-rise operation conference that occurs in December of each year. So there's things that you can kind of put on the schedule and anticipate that sort of thing. But Whit, family first. Try to do the best you can with juggling that. I don't think that any one of us, moms or dads, wants to be a single parent by themselves for long. So, I also try to give my wife a break. So when I've been at the firehouse on a 48 or whatever the case may be, when I come home, hey, I'm up. It's my turn to be 100% dad. You need to get to the gym. You need to go golfing with your girlfriends, do something like that. Just be respectful, that sort of thing. So I think I'm better at it now than I used to be, but I wasn't very good about juggling that 20 years ago. I was very bad.
So. We all get that wisdom as we just go older, hopefully learning from our mistakes.
Amen.
All right. I got one coming from Dirk Janiak. Janiak, man, you got to tell me how to pronounce that. I ask you every time, so I'm sorry. But Dirk said, question, Chief. He did not say where he's from yet. What do you tell guys that use the house line on the fire floor because it worked fine so far? Arguments like non-tested old rotten hose lines or limited flow rates aren't enough to convince them to use our high-rise kit. Okay.
Well, the house lines are typically the class 2 standpipe, and that is designed for occupant use. It's a low volume. Many of the buildings in Denver that still have house lines, and there's very few of them in our city that have house lines. Most of them are just the 1.5-inch outlet, because most of our buildings, we've taken those house lines out so that occupants won't use them more than us. Our guys are good about not using them. But it's usually domestic water rather than fire water. I don't know of any that have 3-digit figures in terms of flows. They're usually a 2-digit figure in terms of flow. So I haven't encountered that problem. On our department, guys are very disciplined about using Denver Fire Department hose and hooking up to class 1 or class 3 standpipe hose valve outlets. But if guys are doing that, I think it was Dirk, right?
Dirk.
What's the policy on your fire department? Do you have the ability to change that policy on your fire department or what have you, so that guys aren't doing that? But I think in an attempt to educate them, Dirk, there's one of my mentors is Chief Ted Corporandi, who he wrote the foreword for my first book, and nice. He is a real terrific guy. One thing that he a phrase that he gave me that I use from time to time is, he says, always remember that good luck reinforces bad habits. So there are firefighters all over our fire service that get away with stuff, and they might even end up getting away with it for an entire career. And that does reinforce those bad habits when guys get away with stuff they shouldn't be doing. But Dirk, you know as well as I do, a house line's not something we should be using. I know that there's guys that have gotten pinned down before and they end up using it as a last resort. And in some situations, it could be better than nothing. But I think that in post-incident reviews, there's a reason they got pinned down, is because they were probably doing something they shouldn't have done to begin with, whether it's an elevator up to the fire floor or whatever the case may be. I would have you look at the case study out of Houston. The fire building was 4-leaf towers. The fire occurred in October of 2001. Very good, very experienced. I'm told a real top shelf captain was killed at that fire. And he was at the end of a line that was hooked up. And like any of us, when things start to go south and we're in a low air warning, we would follow that hose line. And the idea is that for it to take us out of that IDLH, which is the reason why we say floor below, floor below, floor below. That's where we're going to hook up. That's where we're going to start, so that when things go bad or we're in a low air warning situation, we have that umbilical cord that takes us out and down out of the IDLH. If it's a house line, it's going to be coming off of a cabinet, and when things go bad, if you need to get out, you're going to follow that. Where's it going to take you to? It takes you to a cabinet on the fire floor, and you're in the middle of the Black Sea, and you might not be able to likely would not be able to find the stairs. So I think you already know, Dirk, it's not a good thing to do. How do you convince the people that are doing it not to do it? Well, you could have me come in and I'll do a training class. How's that? Because what each and every one of us that's part of this training program tonight understands is there's an old biblical saying that says you can't be a prophet in your own country. Mm-hmm. Somebody from outside's got to come in and tell your folks that, you know what, it's not a good thing. I would recommend you stop doing this. And sometimes then it gets some legs and it becomes part of the culture that you don't do that anymore. But yeah, that the house line thing, that's bad. And it's bad, Dirk. Just try to keep fighting the good fight to try and get it changed in your organization. But I feel very blessed that I work for an organization that does very good work in this arena. We never use house lines. We go into buildings with our stuff. With that said, our Fire Prevention Bureau about 25 years ago took the house lines out of these buildings. I don't know that I know of a building in Denver where there's linen hose still in there. Gotcha. There's some 1.5-inch outlets, but there's not any hose in there anymore. So,
right on. Excellent. Derek Butler says, I have a little different question that most should find valuable. As far as reflex or setup time for high-rise operations, what is your rule of thumb for determining how much time should be allowed per floor as the incident commander?
Well, I guess how much should be allowed, how much is anticipated, how much is expected. It would be realistic for each of us to, and I don't want to say allowed because we want to do better than what's really there. A realistic rule of thumb is to anticipate and expect a reflex time of 1 minute for every flight of vertical distance you have to travel. If you have a fire on the 20th floor of a high-rise building, there's a good chance that you might not have water on that fire for 20 plus minutes. It's good stuff to talk about because it helps us understand the importance of selecting the appropriate weapon.
Right.
And obviously I'm a proponent of the most powerful weapon for high-rise standpipe operations, that being 2.5-inch hose. I do believe that there's a place for 2-inch hose in some situations, primarily as the nozzle section. If it's a compartmentalized fire in a residential building, that sort of thing. But 1 minute per flight of travel for sure. Here's how I try to, tell me the name of that firefighter again, Corley.
I'm scrolling back. Derek Butler.
So Derek, one of the things here's how I try to put it in perspective when I'm doing training programs for firefighters. You and I go to a standard issue single family dwelling fire. It's a 2,500 square foot ranch. We roll up there, and on the Bravo side near the Charlie corner, we can see fire blown out of a window. We see the A side. We do a 3-sided approach and get out of the way for our aerial apparatus. And we see the Delta side. So we've seen 3 sides. You got a working fire. It's in a house. We've been in this subdivision before. We know with a great deal of certainty that likely the fire is showing from the master bedroom. 200-foot pre-connect, in the front door, left turn, 15 feet, right turn, we got water on the fire. Fair enough? Derek, I always ask people, tell me how long that's going to take you to get water on that fire. The very best engine companies that I have the privilege to work with on the Denver Fire Department, from the time the engineer sets the air brake till the time they have water on that fire, is going to be in the 2-minute range, 2 to 3 minutes. And I'm talking about they're breathing clean fire department air. Their helmets are actually on their head. Their hoods are covering their skin. Their right gloves on their right hand, all those sorts of things, okay? Now, I ask firefighters the question. I say, okay, you now have a fire on the 20th floor of a high-rise building. Air brake the water on the fire. And you get a wide range of answers, but most firefighters recognize and realize that it's going to be a significantly longer period of time than it is for our 2,500 square foot ranch that we can get with a 200-foot pre-connect. Most firefighters would say 20th floor, probably in the 20-minute range. Now, Derek, let's go back to the 2,500 square foot ranch. Okay, you and I and Corley, we've rolled up on that. We did a 3-sided approach. Engineer hits the air brake. We're looking at the Delta side. We know we got a working fire. Fire's coming out that Bravo side near the Bravo Charlie corner. What I say to firefighters is, in this situation, don't get out of the pumper for 20 minutes. Okay?
Okay.
And you can see Corley's chuckling a little bit there, because we would never do that in a million years, and the chief would really frown on us doing that. I just want firefighters to understand that when they roll up to a high-rise building and they see fire blowing out of a window on the 20th floor, that's not necessarily the enemy that they're going to be facing by the time they get up there. Given ample oxygen and fuel, there could be much more involvement. Any introduction of wind, that sort of thing, can be a much more significant fire. So there are firefighters, well, geez, it's a residential compartmentized fire. Why can't I use 1 3/4 on this or whatever? There's a wide variety of reasons behind that. Part of it has to do with the standpipe system itself. But remember, if we're not going to get a drop of water on a fire in 20 minutes, you're going to want something super powerful when you get up there. And that super powerful thing that we have is a 2.5-inch attack line with a smoothbore 1 1/8-inch nozzle. So long answer for you, Derek. About 1 minute per flight of vertical distance. With that said, the very best firefighters that I know, and once again, I have the privilege to work on a fire department with what I consider to be the best fire department in the country. And I would put my very best firefighters against anybody else's very best firefighters. My very best firefighters are firefighters that are in really top physical condition. You got to keep in mind, they call Denver the Mile High City. We're at altitude. We're a mile high in altitude when we're walking into the lobby of a building.
Right.
So we're already dealing with thin air. The firefighters that I know on this job, who climb stairs, do the CrossFit, do whatever physical fitness program they do, are firefighters that with the extra 100 pounds of equipment can do that climb in about the 20-second per flight range.
Wow.
So they're cutting it down significantly, just by virtue of being in top physical condition. All right. Now, is every single member of the 1,050 members on the DFD, are they all in that kind of top physical condition? I think you know the answer to that.
Right.
Okay. Many of the firefighters that I have the privilege to work with are in that top physical condition. And if those are the ones that are going up there on the front end of that attack and we don't have the use of elevators, they're shaving significant reflex time. But even in that situation, that fire is going to grow. It's going to grow because there is going to be some reflex time. Rule of thumb, 1 minute per flight of vertical climb.
Love it. Love it. Chief, I'm getting tons of questions from the audience. You enjoying it so far?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because you're absolutely killing the answer, so I just don't want to cut. Chief Shannon Stone chiming in, speaking of Florida, and said, what's Chief McGrail's take on 2.25 hose in high-rise use? We are beginning to use it here in the panhandle of Florida. Thanks.
Okay. Well, you talk about top shelf guys, Shannon Stone. Wow. The spoke from the hub in this situation is that Kurt Isaacson being the hub, and one of those spokes reached out, and I know this excellent chief officer by the name of Shannon Stone, and I've been able to be an attendee at his programs as well. Shannon, I'm flattered that you're part of this tonight, and you're one of the guys I really admire in the fire service. So thank you for everything you do. Number one, if you're having success with it and you think it's a good thing, then to me, there's got to be some value to it just based on the value I have in you and your opinion. When we did test some 2¼ inch hose here in Denver, it was the True ID hose. It was very robust hose. And my belief right now, and I'm not even sure what kind you're using or that sort of thing, but the one that we tested was so robust, and it was such a firm hose, and it was such a kink resistant hose that we couldn't fold it up into a real compact, user-friendly standpipe hose pack. I'm seeing that a lot right now with hose. I know that our friend and colleague and one of the smartest guys in the fire service, Dennis Laguerre, has been a guy that has really pushed for the True ID and more robust hose. I'm kind of like kind of a halfway in between type guy. I know that we need to have some hose that is well constructed, that is going to be able to withstand what's going to be occurring inside of a fire building in terms of debris and heat and that sort of thing. But I also realize there's kind of a balancing act. And for me, I like that kind of middle of the road hose that is very, it is easier to fold up into a compact, user-friendly high-rise hose pack. It's easier to put on the rig in the hose bed and have it be loaded into the hose pack more compactly and that sort of thing for pre-connects, for supply line, that sort of thing. So my experience with the 2¼ was not a good experience. And when I was given several sections to test, and when I sent it out on our department to guys that I really respect that are doing task level work off of standpipes regularly and ground-based operations very regularly, they said, no thanks, but no thanks. You can have this back. I think part of the problem was the construction of the hose. It was too robust, in my opinion. I think the hose, Corley, when somebody comes to me and they say, this new hose, whatever the brand name is, it's really fantastic. It's very kink resistant. The last hose in the world that I'm going to purchase is kink resistant hose. I want hose that kinks easily. Now, when I say that, a lot of the firefighters that are part of this tonight, they think, what is this guy, nuts? Whatever the case may be. No, I want to train firefighters to properly stretch a hose line and not have any piles of hose that are going to lead to the kinks. Once that hose gets charged, I want to be able to bend it and take it around corners. When it's not charged, I want to be able to easily fold it into a pre-connect or for supply hose or a static line or a standpipe hose pack. So I'm not a proponent of that more robust hose. And Shannon, my experience with the 2¼ that I tested, it was just so thick and so firm. The engine 3 on our job couldn't even put 200 feet of it on their front bumper because it was just, it was too thick. It wouldn't fold up really nicely for them. And that was one of the complaints I got about it. In terms of the flow, the guys that I had tested on our job felt that that there wasn't a great difference between the flow of that and then the standard issue 2½ that we had. But that obviously the 2½ flowed a little bit more, but yeah, we gave it a thumbs down. And I hate to say that because if you're having success with it where you're at in Florida, then it's something that in my own mind right now, I'm thinking, geez, maybe I need to give it a second look, because if Shannon Stone says it's a good thing, perhaps I need to give it a second look. So for the audience, if Shannon Stone says that he's having success with it, something you probably should look at. When we looked at it on the DFD, I gave it a thumbs down. So
right there you go. Next one is coming from Stephen Negley. He says, have you tested 2-inch hose with 1.5-inch couplings versus the 2.5-inch couplings? I have heard it is insignificant, but it seems should be pretty significant. What are your thoughts?
Hi, Steve. Good to see you. Think about Matt frequently, and I hope everything's going well for you down there in Florida. I'm a proponent of the 2.5-inch couplings. Okay. I would agree with Steve that because we've done some flow tests, The flow test that we've done with 2-inch hose that has 2.5-inch couplings indicates that the 2-inch hose with 2.5-inch couplings does have a greater flow than the 2-inch hose with the 1.5-inch couplings. It's not a hugely significant number, but it is a greater flow. For me, Steve, the practical standpoint is where I'm sitting today in my belief with regard to high-rise standpipe operations is the sweet spot is not 2.5 entirely, and the sweet spot is not 2-inch entirely. The sweet spot is a combination of 2.5 and 2-inch for a lot of our situations. And it's that FDNY model where they were using a 2-inch for the nozzle section. The practical standpoint is we can stretch a 200-foot attack line with 3 sections of 2.5 and 1 section of 2-inch easier putting it together if we're talking about the same coupling. And so that's why I'm a proponent of the 2.5-inch coupling for 2-inch hose, because, and I think you can use it in conjunction with 2.5 much more easily. So the flow, once again, is not significant, but it is more. And that 10 or 15 GPM, that could be the difference for us. But for me, Steve, it's that practical standpoint of being able to use 2.5 and 2-inch together with the same coupling. So for the firefighters that are with us tonight in the program, my vote and my recommendation is if you're using 2-inch hose, to specify that 2-inch hose like Bill Gustin in Florida did with the 2.5-inch couplings. The one other thing that I would add to that, Corley, is that when you and I go into a fire building for a standpipe operation and we have a 2.5-inch hose valve outlet, we might also have a class 3 standpipe that has both a 2.5 and an 1.5-inch hose valve outlet. Most of the time we have the 2.5-inch hose valve outlet. If we have 2-inch hose or 1 3/4 hose, or God forbid somebody still uses an 1.5-inch hose, which I know it's out there, we have to start with a 2.5 to 1.5-inch reducer on the 2.5-inch hose valve outlet. Okay, class 1, class 3 system. When we do that, a lot of guys don't realize this, but they're putting a pressure restricting device on there as they start their operation.
Right out the gate.
It's basically, it's a, it's an orifice plate, if you will. And we're putting a restricting device on there at the beginning. If you are using 2.5-inch couplings with 2-inch hose, then you're not putting a restricting device on there. There's a much more smooth, tapered transition from that 2.5 down to the 2-inch interior diameter of the hose. And then I think that once again, you increase volume and you have better pressure. Might not be a tremendous amount. I'm not talking about hundreds of GPM, but I'm talking about double-digit figures. So
awesome.
Great to hear from you, Steve. Thanks for chiming in.
Next one comes from Zach Kane out of Colorado. He said, what's your advice from a leadership perspective on the buddy to boss transition?
Oh, wow. Zach Kane. Thanks for the question, Zach. Buddy to boss transition. Well, that's a tough one because, we're in a fire service where we're part of a family and we're with those firefighters. And it's a true balancing act. You have to be the boss, you have to be the supervisor, you have to hold people accountable. I would say the main thing, Zach, is that try to just make sure you treat everybody with respect and dignity, and listen and that sort of thing. You've got to, if you're going to make that transition, be a lieutenant, a captain, a chief officer, that sort of thing. I think you can still have a relationship with people. I have friendships with a lot of firefighters on my job, that sort of thing. But certainly there are times when everybody needs to understand, there's a supervisor subordinate relationship going on there. Be respectful, listen to what guys have to say, but do your job. And that's one of the things that's sadly missing in our fire service sometimes is buddies become bosses, and they're not very good bosses because they still want to be a buddy. And you've heard this before, Zach, but and there's guys that are really very top shelf leaders in the fire service that have said this both in presentations, in the spoken word as well as the written word. If you want to be popular, don't take the test, bro. Okay. You're not, you try to please everybody, you're going to please no one. You got to do your job. You got to be that leader. You got to be the supervisor. I think most firefighters are looking for some direction and looking for somebody to, hey, what do you want from me?
Right.
One of the compliments that I've gotten from fire officers that I've worked with over the years is they appreciate when I give them my expectations. Here's my expectations, okay? Because I think most people are pleasers and they want to please. And what's he want me to do? Well, I want you to breathe fire department air when you're in smoke. I don't want you to breathe smoke. I want you to have your waist belt on your SCBA. I want you to treat all this stuff seriously. I want you to use good elevator discipline, even when we're responding to a frequent flyer building where it's likely going to be a false alarm, those sorts of things. Give them your expectations. It's taken me a long time to learn this, but as a 21st century chief officer, one of the things that I ask of my people, and I deal with captains and lieutenants, but one of the things I ask of them after I give them my expectations is I say, hey, Corley, what's your expectation of me?
Right.
Because I think that that's something I need to hear, and it's something they should have. They should be encouraged to say what their expectations are. So, Zach, you're not going to be popular with everybody. I can tell you that if you queried people in my organization, I'm told that there's people that love me, and I'm told that there's people that hate me. And as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I'd like to be loved by everybody, but that's just not going to happen in the real world. I have expectations, and I hold people accountable to those expectations. And I think some people appreciate it, and there's probably other people that resent it. The other thing I would say, Zach, if you're getting ready to transition and be a fire officer, that sort of thing, the buddy to boss thing, as you say, be consistent. Consistency is really important. I try to be as consistent as possible with the people that work with me so that they can always have a pretty good idea what to expect, both operationally and then in terms of expectations, in terms of, administrative expectations, what we're doing around the firehouse, that sort of thing. Be a gentleman, be consistent. The late Chief Alan Brunacini used to say, be nice, work hard, never give up, with an emphasis on the be nice. You don't have to be a jerk. That exists in our fire service. There's no doubt about that. Consistency, being nice, holding people accountable, providing expectations, listening to your subordinates. What are your expectations of me? I don't know if that helps or not, Zach, or if that's what you're looking for. It's
Very
cool to have a Colorado firefighter on here tonight. I'm not sure where you're from, Zach, but if you're on your way to being a boss, good luck to you. Don't hesitate to reach out. You and I can talk more.
Awesome. And one thing I'll springboard off of what you said, and it's something I don't remember. I wish I could credit who told me, but basically is the person that gets to decide whether you're in buddy mode or boss mode. It's not you. It's the person below. As long as they can keep the respect, then you can be their friend and keep that relationship. But if they lose that respect for the position, then you have to be the boss. There's no option. But they're the ones who get to determine that, and no matter what your desire may be.
Yeah, it's a constant balancing act, Corley and Zach. It's a constant balancing act because, when I was raised in the fire service, as I was coming up as a firefighter, you didn't even talk to the chief.
Right.
The chiefs weren't approachable, and most of the chiefs were not very nice. They were kind of mean, and that was the example that I saw coming up. Well, here we are in the 21st century. It's a different time, and one of the things that I think is important is as the boss, you need to be approachable for everyone, and you need to be mentoring. One of the things that I was taught from my father. My father is a retired division chief from the Denver Fire Department. He did 42 years in the organization. He has told me, and he believes to this day, that we all have a moral responsibility to pass on to the firefighters behind us what we know. And I'm planning on doing several more years, but I'm closer to the end of my career than the front end of my career, and I feel like the hourglass has turned upside down. And for me to be a good mentor to firefighters that are engaged and interested in the job, that's one of my primary responsibilities, is to be a good mentor and pass on the information I know. There's a Tim McGraw song, "Humble and Kind," and I really love that song. And one of the lines in the song is, when you get where you're going, don't forget to turn back around and help the next guy in line. And that's a real important thing. Be a good mentor too, Zach.
Which I want to bring this up because I brought up Kirk. I asked him, before the scrap, what's some stuff. What drives your expectations is what Kurt asked. He said he's by far one of the most professional speakers in the American Fire Service, the man with standards. But what drives your expectations?
Oh boy, that's a real good question. Part of it is part of what's driving my expectations is I want to be as good a fire officer as Chief Kurt Isaacson is. I don't want to let guys down like Kurt and you and Shannon Stone and Scott Thompson and Brian Brush and Zach from Colorado. I don't want to let guys down. That's a big part of it. I mean, there's practical reasons for expectations. For me, Corley, the expectation thing is kind of along the lines of the consistency thing. I'm a big believer, and this is speaking operationally. Most of the time, what most of us do on most of our shifts, I just got through working a 48. I did a donated trade yesterday for a firefighter friend of mine who had an accident, and the day before was my regular shift. We normally work 24 on, 48 up, but I just got through doing a 48. Over the course of my 48, I did not have any incidents that you're going to see on international news or local news or anything like that. It was fairly routine stuff. But what I believe is that when we take everything seriously and we go through the process every time, just like you, Corley, I had a odor investigation of a gas leak yesterday, had a small electrical fire yesterday, that sort of thing. But we went through all the processes.
Nice.
Okay. The expectation of the guys, we are in full gear. We're going in there with a set of irons. We're going in there with hose packs. Our engineers on the standpipe hose valve or standpipe FDC connection. Engineers stretching lines over to it. We're using good discipline when we're operating in the elevators. We checked all our gear in the morning. We worked out that day. All the things that the good firefighters that are part of this training program tonight, they do. I always am very satisfied, even at the end of a work shift where nothing spectacular happened, because I'm like, we did the process. Every time today, at every incident, we did the process. And at the gas leak, well, the gas company, we call it XL Gas in Denver, but when the gas guys were clamping off the line and they were down in the hole with their flash suit on, our guys were on air with a combination nozzle, and they were pointing it right at those XL Gas guys in case there was a flash fire so they could protect them. And we had a truck company close by to drag those guys out there should there be a flash fire. And that flash fire doesn't happen very often, but when it does, we were ready to deal with it. So it's the expectation of always going through the process of doing things properly. And then the night that something's really happened, it's that night with the spectacular fire. Nobody's screaming. What do we do now? What we do is what we always do, except the process is going to be particularly important tonight because we're going to bring it to a full connection, and there's going to be water going through the bail of the nozzle and so on and so forth. So the expectation of trying to make sure that we're really doing what we need to be doing for them, people like Chief Kurt Isaacson, people like Chief Brian Brush, those are the guys, Chief Scott Thompson, those are the guys that have really highlighted in our fire service today that need that, as Kurt says, it's worth the risk because we're here for them.
Right.
Okay. We're not here for us. We're here for them. And in the process of us being here for them, and I'm really learning this mostly from Scott Thompson. I'm rereading his book right now, just an excellent book, The Functional Fire Company.
Yes,
Everybody should be that should be on the reading list across the fire service. But he doesn't use the word safety a lot, and I love that. He uses the words risk management.
Yes.
We want to manage the risk. We want to protect our firefighters from harm. I think we have the best ability to protect them from harm if we have those high expectations and we're always going through that process, even at the high frequency calls that turn out to be pretty routine events. Okay, we did everything we were supposed to do here. And if somebody would have thrown a curveball at us, or if we were to have encountered a fire on the 10th floor, what we really encountered was a malfunctioning detector. But if we would have encountered a fire, we'd have been
ready to go.
We'd been in good shape.
Right on.
We'd have battled that fire and we'd have stopped that fire. So I want to do good work for people like you. I want to do good work for the firefighters that work with me, because as a district chief, I really work for them. Okay. I need to be there for them. And so driving the expectations is the end result of the service delivery that we're given to the people that pay our wages. Right. And in the process of delivering that service, we try to protect our firefighters from harm. I don't know. Long-winded answer. No. Kurt's probably got a better answer to that one.
It was a beautiful answer, Chief. I think you covered it very much. Now, All Hell Reps, Paige is asking this question, and it's kind of a good segue into your scale, because he said, Chief, do you have any strategies for moving firefighters up the scale from oxygen thieves up towards total badasses, especially if the department has no standards? So,
yeah. Well, that's a great question.
Very tall order.
First name?
It's All Hell Reps. Man, I used to be able to rattle off his name like nobody's business. He runs the page All Hell Reps.
Okay. All right.
And for my complete brain freeze of not saying, just rattling his name off.
You know, I've said it over the years, and I would say it again here. I tell firefighters that one of the most, and I should probably say some of the most important RIT operations, rapid intervention team operations that you'll ever go on is rescuing a complacent firefighter.
There you go.
Rescuing a firefighter. Well, I use that term loosely. Rescuing an employee and turning an employee into a firefighter that's an engaged and into the job firefighter. It's a difficult thing, but most firefighters that I hang out with and over the course of time, guys that I trust and believe in, kind of use the 20-60-20 rule, where there's, in most fire department, there's this 20% of firefighters that are really engaged into the job firefighters that you and I would consider to be top shelf and occasional badasses. There's 20% at the other end that really have, for whatever reason, sour attitudes, and maybe they're not physically and mentally prepared, that sort of thing, and maybe they really don't care. And then there's 60% in the middle that could go either way. And that's the focus of our attention is, what can I do to convince this guy to up his or her game a little bit to where they could become a top shelf firefighter and occasionally hover into and out of badassery.
Nice. Nice.
You know, it's very cliche. We've heard it a gazillion times, the lead by example thing. You have to lead by example. You can't have expectations of others unless you're holding yourself to those same expectations. Corley, I'm 58 years old, but I'm in better physical condition today than I've ever been in my fire service career. I've only been in better physical condition in my life when I was a high school wrestler.
Right.
And it becomes more and more difficult over the course of time. Everybody has aches and pains over the course of the years, injuries here and there, but we got to be in top physical condition. And I want to be that chief officer that other firefighters see working out, staying in top physical condition. I'm not above mopping a floor. I'm not above helping a company load hose. I did that yesterday. I helped a company load hose. I enjoy it, but I think that's important. As the commandant of the Marine Corps one time said, we're all riflemen first.
Right on.
It's really important to do that. So leading by example and trying to reach out to people, because sometimes, you get shut down, and I've been shut down before too, but sometimes a young firefighter, a young person who might be more of an employee than a firefighter, they just want somebody to reach out to them. Hey, why don't you come down and join us and try this or try that? I've had firefighters over the course of my career, Corley, tell me that, you changed my career. You changed the direction of my career. This is where I was going, and this is what I was doing. And then I realized there was something else out there, and they jumped on board. Now, there's that segment of people, and you know them and I know them, that they'd look at all of us tonight that are part of this scrap of yours. What a bunch of fire nerds. Are you kidding me?
Right. No, absolutely.
Get a life, you one-dimensional loser.
Right.
I've been told that more than once. There's no doubt about that. A big part of my life, a big part of your life is the fire service, our job. And the firefighters that are the engaged firefighters, I think, are firefighters that are they're going to have more longevity because they're putting themselves in a better position to survive. They're making themselves harder to kill. Okay, as Jason Bresler would say.
Right.
They're making it better for the firefighters that work with them, because they're going to be able to better protect those firefighters from harm and so forth. So, to answer the question, keep setting that example. Never give up. The most important rescue you'll ever make in your fire service career is rescuing a complacent firefighter from his or her human complacency. And Corley, with that said, we are all human beings. We're all fallible human beings, and we can all drift into a level of complacency ourselves from time to time. So we count on one another. If I'm working with you, Corley, I'm counting on you to recognize someday when I'm a little bit off and kick me in the pants and say, hey, tune it up a little bit. We're on the job right now. Let's be prepared. And so surrounding yourself with those type of people, that's helpful. Being realistic, I'm more of an idealist than a realist, but you do have to be realistic, and you got to understand some people. There's an old movie. It was a movie with Paul Newman called Cool Hand Luke. And your attendees tonight, if they haven't seen that movie, it's kind of an interesting old movie, but you can see some excerpts on YouTube. But the warden of the jail that Cool Hand Luke, Paul Newman's character was Cool Hand Luke. The warden of the jail said, some men just don't get it. Okay. You got to be realistic. And some guys are not going to get it. And there's a segment of people too, and some of them want to consider themselves salty guys.
Right.
That, I look cool when my waist belt's undone, when my coat's open and my hood's in my pocket. This is nothing. It's probably just another false alarm. The guys that I think look cool are the guys that are coming in and that waist belt is buckled and they got their hood in place and they got a set of irons, they got a hose pack and that sort of thing. And they're going into what is probably going to turn out to be a system malfunction.
Right.
They're going into a fire. And on that 1 out of 1,000 where it turns out to be a fire, they're going to perform, and they're going to perform really well. But yeah, our categories of excellence, not exactly politically correct, but category number 2 is that top shelf firefighter. Love it. And I always encourage firefighters to be a top shelf firefighter. And that's a physically and mentally prepared firefighter that is not just on the job, they're into the job. And the category 1 is badass. And nobody, even the very best guys that you and I know, can be labeled a badass all the time, because none of us are perfect all the time.
Right.
But we all want to be that top shelf firefighter that sometimes the performance is just such that guys look at it, man, he is some kind of a badass. Did you see the job that he did? And I think of several guys in my mind from my job and across the fire service that I consider to be badasses. That's category number 1. Category number 3 is what we refer to as a good firefighter. Okay, a good man, and that's somebody that they do their job, and they do their job well. They may or may not be into the job, and that's okay. They do their job. I always, firefighters like that, I say, hey, come with us down to H-Rock this year. It's really cool. And see if I'm always trying to tip them over to where they really become into the job. That category number 4 is the nice guy.
The nice guy.
And every firefighter that is part of your program tonight, they know what that means. When somebody describes somebody, and usually it's a slow answer from a gentleman or a lady, when you say, hey, do you know this guy? I see he's got to transfer in to come to our company. And it's kind of a slow answer. This person that's answering the question is somebody that they don't want to throw anybody under the bus. They don't want to speak poorly about anybody. They want to treat everybody with respect and dignity. And then the answer is, you know what? He's a real nice guy.
Right.
Well, that's a siren. That's a red light for all of us. A nice guy is somebody you can't help but to like them. They're a nice human being, so on and so forth. But they're definitely not into the job. And at fires, they could be part of the problem, not part of the solution. You know, can you reach them and can you get them to evolve higher on the list? Certainly, that's possible. There's no doubt about it. Without using any real foul language or nasty words or whatever, but category 5 in essence is somebody that's incompetent. Category 6 is somebody that's not only incompetent, but they really celebrate the fact that they're incompetent. They're kind of a jerk about it. Yeah, I don't know how to use that, and I could give a crap about how to use that, whatever. Right. So, and I don't know that we can rescue category 5s and 6s, but in the fire service, we are a microcosm of human society, and there's a wide range of people in the fire service. And I certainly appreciate those firefighters that are categories 1, 2, and 3. That are good firefighters, top shelf firefighters that hover into badassery from time to time just because of their performance and the fact that they were physically and mentally prepared to do so. So keep leading by example. Try and rescue as many people as you can and bring them over to the good side of the street where they're not just on the job, but they're into the job as well.
Love it, man. And All Hell Reps is Everett Mansfield. That's the name I couldn't pull out. So.
Okay. Everett, great to hear from you. Thanks for the question, Everett.
All right, one more question coming at you. I know I missed a bunch of questions, guys, so just bear with me. Chief's been great at fielding them. And this one comes from Jason Haynes out of Palm Harbor, Florida. He said, Chief, do you prefer to lay out your hose bundles on the floor, hallway below the fire, and then feed the hose up onto the fire floor, or do you prefer to lay out in the stairwell and flake up the stairs to floor above, and why? Thanks in advance.
Was that Jason?
Jason.
Okay. Jason, thanks for the question. Depends on the situation, Jason. Here's my experience has been this. Most of the fires that I've responded to and most of the fires that we get in my corner of the fire service are in residential buildings. They are usually fires that are compartmentalized to a fire apartment, a dormitory room, a hotel room, that sort of thing. If we have as part of our team and on the DFD, the people that are going up immediately to go to work is one truck company and 2 engine companies going up to the fire floor. That truck company is going to get up to the fire floor first if they're able to get out onto a fire floor based on compartmentation or not compartmentation, but most of the time they're able to get to the fire apartment. They're going to control the door. There may be 2 truck company firefighters that go into the apartment depending on conditions with a can and a tick to start an operation. Officers probably going to be involved in door control, that sort of thing, while an engine company stretching a line. To answer your question in that situation, which is our most frequent situation, we're going to try and stretch dry line up to the point of entry, okay? And have at least 50 feet of nozzle section hose at that point of entry. Get it fully stretched out. There should be no piles of hose. That way we don't have any kinking, so on and so forth. We're going to call for water before our control guy gives water between him and the officer of the engine company. They're going to make sure everybody sees the entire stretch so that hose hasn't fallen into a well hole, a door hasn't become unwedged and closed over the hose, that sort of thing. They'll give them water and we're going to go to work. So to answer your question, we call that an apartment stretch. We want to try whenever possible, if we're able to do it and manage our risk, we want to stretch hose as dry as we can safely do it, hopefully up to the point of entry. Jason, you and I get a fire, and this is that next category. I'll call that first one 90%. This next category, I'll call this one like an 8% type situation. The door to the fire apartment was left open, and the fire is in the hallway. And as firefighters like to refer to that as a dirty hallway. The hallway's got heavy smoke and it's got heat in it, and fire and pre-flashover conditions and portions at the distance into the hallway. We need to start from the stairwell with a loaded gun, which means we need to do a stairwell stretch, which means we need to charge our line. And what you described, Jason, most of our charged hose line is going to be on the floor below, and there's going to be a significant amount of labor where the second due engine company is really working hard at those friction points so that the first due engine company can advance down that hallway. But we need a loaded gun before we start out onto the floor. We'll call that a non-gravity assisted stairwell stretch. A very low percentage, I'll call it 2% of the time, we may do a gravity assisted stairwell stretch. It requires a stairwell that is a large stairwell with a lot of room and pretty generous landings, something we don't have most of the time. But we would run hose up to the next landing, whether it's a half landing or in scissor stairs to the next floor landing before we charge it. So we would have that gravity assistance as we're advancing out into the hallway or onto the fire floor. Now, that's a real ticklish one there, Jason, because you never want to do a gravity assist stairwell stretch unless you know for sure you're going to move and you're going to advance. If we open up the door from the stairwell to that hallway or to the fire floor in a commercial situation, and we have so much fire that we're not able to advance out there, well, that stairwell's become a chimney now, and we're destroying the hose that's in that elevated position, okay? So unless you know you're going to move, you don't want to do the gravity-assisted stairwell stretch. And most of the time, we don't know that answer. So most of the time, if we're doing a stairwell stretch, it's a non-gravity-assisted stairwell stretch. Those would be the three that I teach and the ones that we use. The one that we use most frequently is an apartment stretch, where we're able to stretch up to the point of entry, usually in residential buildings where a fire is compartmentalized to an apartment. But we're only able to do that if, in our situation, it's going to be a truck company. In your situation, whoever it would be on your team, but a firefighter, a group of firefighters from your team, they have to be controlling the door, the entry door. Otherwise, we can't stretch dry.
Right.
So anyhow, hope
Perfect.
that helped, Jason. I hope that answered the question.
All right, one more, because Dirk said, what do you think about the smoke curtains, Chief?
The smoke curtains. I know that the European Fire Service is using the smoke curtains. And now I hope I'm understanding what you're saying here. And I know I can't talk directly to you on this. I think what you're talking about is the curtains that we could bring into a building and put it above an entry door where we go in to try and control the flow path. I think that's what you're talking about.
I'll tell you if he disagrees with that, but small delay as he hears what you say and then answers.
Okay. I know the European Fire Service is doing some of the stuff with the smoke curtains and so forth. I don't have smoke curtains. I've not experimented with them. I work on a fire department that is budget limited. And so to go to my operations chief and I say, can we get some of these smoke curtains? I'm pretty sure the answer is going to be no, because we have to prioritize a lot of other things ahead of those.
And he did say, instead of door control, yes, sir. He's talking about those curtains.
So my answer, first name of this firefighter again?
Dirk. We're back. Dirk again.
Okay. Dirk, we have a flow control device in the building already, and it's the door. And two of the most important things that I've learned over the course of trying to be a real good student of high-rise firefighting, one of them was the introduction of the Standpipe inline pressure gauge. The other one is door control. Even with a 2.5-inch hose going into an apartment, if I put a door strap, and we have those door straps, they're kind of the rubber tubing with the two holes in it. You know, you can put it over your face and you can pretend you're the Lone Ranger.
Right.
But over both doorknobs so that the door doesn't latch and close behind me, that gives us some door control before a line goes through there. Hose line goes through there. Obviously, we're not going to be able to close that door entirely, but you have a built-in curtain that's already in the building, and you can get about 80 to 85% flow control with that opening just by bringing that door to a partially closed position. Now, we will actually assign somebody to that position, Dirk, that's actually doing that. And obviously, they're taking a look from time to time. They've got good situational awareness. They're taking a look to see how the team's doing inside the apartment. They hear somebody coming up on the door with a vibra alert. They're going to push the door open and get them out and make sure they're on the hose line headed to the stairwell. So it's a dynamic thing, this whole door control thing. But the trying to shorten the answer for you here, I don't think we need the curtains because we have flow control devices and it's the door. Now, with that said, you got to have a very disciplined truck company, as John Norman says in his book, Fire Officer's Handbook of Tactics. One of the things that's really important when forcing entry is to maintain the integrity of the door.
All right.
You can get somebody very enthusiastic, and sometimes it ends up coming off the hinges just because of various locks and that sort of thing. We got to get in there. You want to do your utmost to try and maintain the integrity of the door so that we maintain the flow control device. We don't have to bring a curtain in. So Dirk, we can control flow at the fire apartment with that door. We can control flow at the door from the public hallway to the stairwell as well, to try and make sure that we don't have significant impact from potential wind. But to answer your question, save your money, maintain the integrity of the door, use the door that's already in the building.
Love it. Love it. Good answers. Great answers tonight, Chief. I'm just sitting here listening, just absorbing. People ask me how come I do scraps every week, and you're seeing why, because I get to have awesome conversations with the brightest and best in the fire service.
We talk about, Corley, we talk about the vicarious experience. And guys will sometimes ask me, what I base my operations on. Certainly a good part of it's my own experience, but also a good part of it is your experience as a firefighter. What I learned from you, what I learned from Kurt Isaacs and Brian Brush, different great firefighters across the fire service, the vicarious experience. I would just add to that, my dad came on the fire service in 55 and retired in 97. And I always tell firefighters, his fire service was a much larger fire service than my fire service. My fire service is a small fire service. Tonight, you're facilitating a training drill and a conversation with firefighters. I don't even know where all they're from, but certainly firefighters from across the American Fire Service.
Absolutely.
We're all connected because there is this modern technology thing called the internet, and your knowledge of Zoom and all this stuff that what you're doing, I don't completely understand.
Very small knowledge. Let's put it that way.
I wouldn't be able to facilitate this drill, but it's a small fire service today. Think of the firefighters that that are in your contact lists. And you hear a fire that occurred in Escambia County. I know you're going to be reaching out to Chief Isaacs and, hey, did you go to that fire? Yeah, I did go to that fire. Tell me a little bit about it. That's the vicarious experience. You're gaining experience from Chief Isaacson's direct experience. It'll be a vicarious experience for you, but he's going to give you information that you're going to take with you and you're going to use in Moore, Oklahoma.
No, without a doubt, man. And again, we'll go back to Brush just to bring it full circle, because he told me something at Water on the Fire, and it was he said, when you get outside the walls of your own department, you realize the fire service has no walls, and it's just powerful. All right, this is my favorite part of the scrap, because I get to ask people, what book or books do you think that firefighters should read? It doesn't have to be a firefighter book, just book or books that you think a firefighter should be reading.
Well, the book that I'm currently very hooked on and I'm most impressed with, is Chief Scott Thompson's book, The Functional Fire Company.
Great book.
I've had the privilege and the pleasure to sit down with Chief Thompson. He invited me to his fire department. I got to do a training program there. That's where I met the Squad 18 of the Colony Fire Department, which I was just amazed to see that. I've seen the chief speak in person, and obviously I'm rereading his book right now. I have already approached my boss and said this should be on our reading list for Lieutenant and Captain. Now, Chief Thompson in the book, he'll say in full candor that his book is designed primarily for suburban fire departments. What he talks about in terms of a functional fire company is every bit as applicable to an urban fire company as it is a suburban fire company. And it's really good stuff. Any of the firefighters that are with us tonight as part of your program, the functional fire company has got to be a part of their reading list. there's a number of them. I'm not sure whether I'll be able to get to anything by Vincent Dunn. Chief Dunn, I just admire him so much, and just a tremendous amount of experience, his knowledge of the collapse of burning buildings, so on and so forth. The late Francis Brannigan's work with regard to building construction is critical to be a part of anybody's fire department library. I'm a huge fan of Chief John Norman. His Fire Officer Handbook of Tactics and the many editions have been on the reading list for company officer on the Denver Fire Department for many decades. Awesome. And awesome. He's just a tremendous guy. For strictly kind of, I guess, pleasure reading, I guess, is what I might call it. I just read, Chief John Norman's book, Working with Giants.
Right. I haven't read it yet, so you enjoying it?
You're gonna love it.
Okay.
You're gonna not be able to put it down. His modern book, and I think I'm saying the title correctly. I hope I am. Working with Giants. It's the modern report from Engine Company 82.
Oh, okay. Good. Yeah.
I would encourage every firefighter that's with us tonight to read Report from Engine Company 82 by Dennis Smith. I've told Chief Isaacson this before, that if I could put us in a time machine and put us on Intervale Avenue in 1970 South Bronx, New York, I'd love to do that. I think it'd be really cool. But that original report from Engine Company 82 was really cool by Dennis Smith. Chief Norman's new book on Working with Giants reminds me of that book, but it's a more modern version. But he talks about his career and the places he worked and the things he did, and certainly has a chapter dedicated to 9/11 and his experiences on that really tragic day and so forth. But the other thing that's interesting I find about Norman, when I've read his tactics book, he'll integrate stories with his tactics just to kind of emphasize the point. In his book, Working with Giants, he integrates tactics into the story. And he has a really good ability to do that. So you also learn some different things that way. I've always been a huge fan of the book, Air Management for the Fire Service. I'm a huge Mike Galliano fan. Okay. And there are 3 other officers that some are still active firefighters on the Seattle Fire Department. Some are retired fire officers from the Seattle Fire Department. But when I first picked up Air Management for the Fire Service, it's a big book. It's a thick book, and it's pretty intimidating looking. Those guys did another really good job integrating stories and that sort of thing with regard to educating firefighters about air management. I was that firefighter Corley in a 30-minute air cylinder that always called it a 30-minute air cylinder.
Right.
And today I wear a 45-minute air cylinder, and everybody calls it a 45-minute air cylinder. Those guys educated me, and I understand that what I'm wearing today is an 1,800-liter air cylinder. And what I understand today is that there's no way on God's green earth that I'm going to get 45 minutes out of that air cylinder if I'm working.
Right.
And what I learned from them is to really think about that air management. And so I encourage my firefighters, I encourage all the firefighters who are with you tonight with your program, if they're not already doing it, to do an air consumption test, to get in full gear, to get their SCBA on, to go on air, Kaiser sled, the flipping the tire, raising ladders, stretching some hose, all the stuff that we do on a physical evaluation, that sort of thing. For me, I do a lot of stair climbing.
Right.
But I really want to know, how much time do I have in this so-called 45-minute, truly an 1,800-liter air cylinder? How much time do I really have when I'm working full steam ahead? How much time do I have when I've got 2 greens for a Scott heads-up display? How much time do I have for the 1 green? How much time do I have for the flashing yellow, and how much time do I have in the flashing red? And the air management guys and the Seattle guys in that book, they emphasize the importance of us understanding that, the flashing red, the air that's in that's left in the cylinder when we're on a flashing red, it's really important that we understand that a lot of that air belongs to our family.
Right.
That's for us to understand. Okay, I'm deep inside this commercial building, and I'm I'm going to have to start making a move here pretty soon so that I can get out of the building, preferably get out of the building with a flashing yellow as opposed to a flashing red. So if you encounter something, you get cut off, you get disoriented or whatever, you've got the ability to you have time.
Right.
Now, with that said, Corley, you and I are inside of a fire building right now, and we found a victim, and none of us have ever carried a victim out of a building. It doesn't happen that way. There's not going to be a fireman's carry. We're dragging somebody out of a building. They're a heavy person. They're slippery because they've been burned. Their head is hitting every step as we take them down the stairs. There's nothing graceful. There's nothing glamorous about it. And if we can just get them out of the building, the doctors will hopefully take care of that subdural hematoma that they're going to have on the back of their head. Okay. But you and I move into a flashing yellow. We're not going to drop that person and haul ass. Okay. We're going to do everything we can. We're going to get that person out of the building. What I'm talking about in terms of the flashing yellow is all things being equal, just firefighters being cognizant of their air management and understanding how long they really can last when they're working in whatever SCBA and whatever cylinder they're using. It's not going to be 45 minutes, not even for a young, really physically fit, CrossFit trained firefighter.
Right.
Is not going to get 45 minutes out of that. So that's a very good book. There's a bunch.
No doubt about it, man. I don't think you've said one yet that wasn't amazing. So, and some of them I haven't read, which is hard for people to suggest sometimes. So that's beautiful. Okay. We have a thing that we do on every scrap. It's called the 5 questions for firefighters. Pretty soon we're going to have new 5 questions, but they're not here yet. So we're still taking suggestions because it's been 110 episodes now with the 5 questions. So a lot of the low-hanging fruit is gone. The easy answers are gone. Okay. So it's hard. And so we're going to get new questions. But you have the original 5 questions tonight. So
thank goodness.
Chief McGrail, are you ready for the 5 questions for firefighters?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to let you know after we're done whether I was ready for them or whether I ended up looking like a boob.
Fair enough. Okay. Number 1, what is the number 1 issue facing the modern fire service?
Ooh, the number 1 issue is facing the modern fire service. We need to make sure that our middle name says fire. Right now, we've delved into so many things that are really not designed for the fire service to be responding on, and we need to figure that out. I know one of the things that goes on in my fire service, and it relates around to the emergency medical call. In my city, if somebody's taking a nap, somebody's calling 911. And I think this guy's dead. You can see him laying in the park. And so many times during the day, you can cancel EMS and police. This person's just taking a nap. We've got to start screening our calls and prioritizing our service delivery a little bit better. There's companies on my job that are in that 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 calls a year range, and we got to start screening things and prioritizing things because we're really fatiguing our firefighters. And we have to never forget that our middle name is fire. And even though some people say we don't go to as many fires as we used to, that's debatable. There's no doubt about that. And that's a conversation for another day. Just never forget that the Moore Fire Department,
heck yeah,
the Denver Fire Department, the Escambia County Fire Department, the middle name is fire. And I think that's one of the most important things. Don't forget what our primary mission is. There's a number of things we do, from community engagement, certainly EMS, hazmat, tech, rescue. Those are all important things, and we're in the best position to provide those services. Our middle name is FIRE, F-I-R-E.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely, max points. Near and dear to my heart is the shift to the all hazards approach that has taken the focus off of our primary mission. So that's a very great answer. So I love it. 100%. Question 2. What is the thing you are most excited about for the future of firefighting?
Ooh, what am I most excited about for the future of firefighting? Wow. Boy, these are good questions. I should have gotten these ahead of time from you so I could have studied them a little bit more. What am I most excited about for the future of firefighting? I suppose there's things that we haven't seen yet. There's been so many advances in the course of time that you and I have been firefighters. Oh, yeah. Chief Isaacson, Brian Brush, that sort of thing. The heads-up display on the SCBA, so on and so forth. You can get it can go a little bit overboard too, because sometimes it gets so technical, it can be a little bit of a problem. The lighter equipment, the lighter SCBAs, the heads-up display, maybe a heads-up display that does show temperature, or a thermal imager type heads-up display, that sort of thing. Sometimes what's best in the future is what was best in the past, and that would be more and more firefighters in our great beloved American fire service recognizing the value of the good old-fashioned smoothbore nozzle and the delivery of solid water droplets to burning solid fuel. So sometimes what's old is what is new, and sometimes what's new, the most sophisticated, the most expensive, the $1,200 automatic combination nozzle, no thank you. Okay.
I love
give me that $110 very dependable nozzle, so on and so forth. I don't know if that's a good answer or not.
No, it's a great answer, because I like how you succinctly said it, which is what is old is new again, and you like that's for the future. And so, especially as the shift keeps continuing to happen. Number 3, the best rank or position to be in the fire service.
Wow. I jokingly tell guys that I want to take the engineer's test on our job, because I'd love to be driving a fire truck and so forth. And when I say jokingly tell people, I've enjoyed all the ranks and so forth. I probably enjoy the rank that I'm at the most right now. Okay. My civil service title is assistant chief. The job I do is a district chief, which most of your firefighters would be familiar with that term, battalion chief. Okay. I much prefer the term battalion chief because I like the military terms. I believe that I'm able to mentor and have the greatest positive effect on the greatest number of people in the position of district chief. I have a 41-member team, including myself, in District 3 on the Denver Fire Department. And there's 8 fire companies out of 6 stations in my district. And I feel like I have the opportunity to positively affect all 41 of those people, me being one of the 41. So I would say that the rank I'm at is okay. Probably there's certainly stuff with it that isn't always enjoyable. There's some politics, there's different things like that isn't always enjoyable. But I just believe when you can get into a position where you have the ability to mentor, train, lead by example, coach, convince firefighters that maybe we're on the borderline to come over to become top shelf firefighters, to change the way they're doing things, to be in better physical condition, to train more frequently, that sort of thing. I believe the position I'm in right now, I've been able to provide the best and the most positive impact.
Awesome.
That makes sense.
No, I love the answer. I don't think you can give a better answer, especially if you're still actively in the fire service, to give the better answer than the one I'm currently in. I think that's one of the best answers you can give.
Oh, and let me just add just one thing to that, Corley. That's not to diminish any of the ranks that exist out there.
Absolutely.
One of the people that I'm closest to on the Denver Fire Department is a senior firefighter on the busiest engine company on our job. And his name is Josh Shower. And he's a firefighter. He's part of my training team and so on and so forth. I don't know that he will promote to lieutenant. He certainly could if he wanted to. But the value of a senior, seasoned, dedicated firefighter in a senior position, it can't be overstated.
Right.
Because he is a leader.
Right.
He's a leader in that position and a very important leader on our job. A good engineer who there was an engineer at Engine 3, the guys referred to him, his nickname was Poetry, because he drove smoothly and he pumped smoothly, and they said it was just like poetry every time, and so on and so forth. The value of that engineer getting us there safely, getting us water. The company officer, the guy that's leading the charge and leading that small group, and Chief Thompson talks about that in his book. In our system, we have lieutenants and then captains. You can't underestimate that. I was never an engineer. I did act engineer, but I was never a promoted engineer. But I enjoyed all the positions. The one I'm in right now, probably I enjoy as much of any of them, and I'm probably having as good a time today in 2021 as I ever have throughout my 39 years.
That is awesome. That right there is awesome. So, number 4. the best advice you have ever received?
Ooh, best advice I've ever received. Um, my dad is my primary mentor. My dad will turn 90 years old in March of this year. He and I talk shop on a regular basis.
That's awesome.
My dad has given me advice over the years, and the mindset that I have and how I operate is most significantly related to what he's taught me over the years. He said, Dave, the most important fire you'll ever go to is the one you're at right now. We have to always remember that when we're in the heat of battle. I mean, it can just be a smoke investigation that maybe is developing or whatever. She says, I'm telling you what, there's something going on in that attic. Okay. The decisions I make right now, this is the most important fire I'll ever go to right now. My dad has always said, don't think about what the fire's doing right now. Think about what this fire is going to be doing 10 minutes from now. So very good advice from him over the years. He's always told me, especially when I was testing for promotion and, how should I do this in the assessment center? He told me, be yourself. And I think that's good advice. And then certainly appreciate the late Chief Alan Brunacini. He was on the advisory board for FDIC. And I asked him if I could have a conversation with him after dinner a couple of years ago at our FDIC advisory board meeting, and he gave me 2.5 hours of his time.
Wow.
And shortly after that is when he passed away. And I felt I felt like it was such a gift that I had the opportunity to talk to him. But what he told firefighters and what he always said as part of his general philosophy, and that was the be nice, work hard, never give up. And I think that's huge. Be nice, work hard, never give up.
Love it. Hey, I can't knock it, man. Last question. Heavy fire and searchable space. Would you rather be assigned to the nozzle or first in on VES?
Oh, wow. Geez. Both critically important positions. There's no doubt about it. The guys doing the VES, they're the ones that are going to get the medal. Okay. Where I'd rather be is on that nozzle. And if it's heavy fire that you just described, Corley, then I want to be on that nozzle with a strong team. I want it to be a 2.5-inch attack line. Ooh. I want it to be the People's Choice nozzle with a 1 1/8-inch smoothbore tip. I want to be delivering that 266 GPM, and I want to pulverize the fire in such a manner that we protect that person that the VES guys are going for, and we protect the VES searchers that are going there. Because the VS that's a ticklish, and it's a dangerous, and it's a critical thing. And once again, those guys are going to get the medal when it's all said and done. If that engine company doesn't stop the fire, the person they're searching for is not going to survive, and the firefighters that are searching for that person might not survive as well. So I'll take the nozzle, brother.
Love it. Love the answer. There it is. The 5 questions for firefighters, according to Chief Dave McGrail. Brother, that was I cannot believe you just went 2 hours. I don't know if you realize that.
I hope nobody's asleep out there. If you fell asleep, then I hope you got some good rest.
I tell you this, like almost every question came from the audience because I had 11 questions here, including ones that people sent in. Guys, you sent them in. I'm sorry. You know the scrap and you know the audience, how we get rolling. There was 11 questions that I had planned for this evening. I think we got to 3 of the planned ones. Some of them came up in the audience questions, but Chief, you absolutely crushed it. It's officially number 110, scraps in the book. If someone wants to get a hold of you, reach out and contact you, what's the best way to do so?
I'm not terribly sophisticated with social media, so I'm still just kind of a good old fashioned email and cell phone type guy. But my email address is my first, the initial of my first name, D. My last name, McGrail, Denver FD. It's all one word. So DMCGRAILDENVERFD as in fire department. D. McGrail, Denver FD at MSN.com is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I'd be happy to help out. I'm trying to get more sophisticated with Facebook. I do have a McGrail Fire Ops Facebook handle, but I'm not nearly as sophisticated as I need to be or I'd like to be. But if anybody reaches out to me via email, I'd be happy to have the new friendship, the new brotherhood, the new sisterhood, whatever the case may be, and help out that person any way I could.
That's awesome. There it is. Email's the way to go. Everybody, I got a couple announcements. My house cleaning here at the end. These came in the mail today. I'm very pumped and excited about them. So it is the Firehouse Vigilance official challenge coin. There it goes. Snap into focus.
That's a good looking one.
And then on the back side, you got Scrappy. And he's saying it, mutts don't scrap, right there. And so these are on the website, firehousevigilance.com. No, I actually didn't advertise them or anything yet. I just put them on the website. So if you go there, only the people who are watching the scrap know that they're actually up there. So there's that. The coins are released. You heard it here first. This Thursday on the 4th is Danny Dwyer coming up, the next scrap, number 111. So don't miss that. Plan to be here live if you like the live show. This weekend, I am headed to Arkansas, First In Fire Conference. There's still tickets available. If you want to go to a top-notch, Chief Scott Thompson, who we talked about today, is going to be teaching there. Kyle Romagus, Howard Reinwald. I'm leaving people out. Sean Duffy's coming down. It's going to be a great conference. So if you have a chance, get there. I always, until Christmas gets here, I'm going to mention Next Rung, Blake Stennett and what he does, and Amazon Smile. If you shop on Amazon, go sign up for Amazon Smile and put it in Next Rung in there and get raise money for Next Rung. It's a great, great cause. Last thing is I have my Washington football team. It's a bomber jacket hanging back there. I want to get a set of bunker gear, to travel around the country with when I teach, that says Firehouse Vigilance on the back. So if you make bunker gear and want to be hanging back there in the scrap, reach out to me and let me know, because it's going to hang back there, and then I'm going to take it, of course, and travel and get it all smoky at some point. That's it. That's everything I got. If you're at the conference and you see me, get a picture, because I like the Mutts Don't Scrap pictures. That's everything. Chief, you absolutely killed it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Corley. I appreciate it. I'm flattered and honored that you would have me be a part of this. And thank you to all the firefighters that are engaged that attended your program tonight. I'm
telling you right now, you're going to have to come back, because we barely scratched the surface. So we'll have to do it in the future, and I'll reach out to you. I promise. Audience, thank you for the unbelievable great questions. And like I said, the scrap exists because of you guys. I hope the tone stays silent unless it's burning. Everybody stay safe out there.